Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the California Department of Education's Playful Learning Across the Preschool through Third Grade Continuum webinar. This is part one of a two-part series of the P-3 alignment webinars offered by CDE or the California Department of Education. We are very excited to be here with you today. I am Valentina Ware, and I am one of the presenters for today's webinar. We have a few quick logistics to run through before we get started. We will be taking Q&A or question and answer in the Q&A feature, so feel free to communicate with us there and ask questions if needed. Lastly, we will have the slide deck available for those who would like a copy of this webinar. I will now pass it to our Deputy Director, Sarah Neville-Morgan, for introductions. Next slide, please.
Thank you so much, Valentina. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us today. It is my honor to be here for the Playful Learning Across the Preschool through Third Grade P-3 Continuum webinar. My name, as Valentina said, is Sarah Neville-Morgan, and I'm a Deputy Superintendent for the for the Opportunities for All branch, or OFAB, at CDE. We're welcoming you here on behalf of CDE and the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond. We're happy to have you all join us today for our 14th edition of the OFAB P3 webinar series. Today, I am joined by Stephen Profiter, the Early Education Division Director, and Shanna Burgos-Vasquez, Education Administrator in the Universal Preschool, or UPK, Implementation and Support Office within the Early Ed Division. Next slide, please. In addition, we're also joined by other members of our CDE team, Sterling E. Williams, an Education Programs Consultant in our Expanded Learning Division, and Valentina Ware, a Child Development Consultant in the UPK Implementation and Support Office within the Early Ed Division. So thank you from all of us to all of you for joining us today. Next slide, please. Today is the first part of a two-part series on playful learning across the P3 continuum. The second and final part of the series will be held on Thursday, August 17th at 3:30 p.m. 2023. A link will be added in the chat if you would like to register. The second webinar is also intended to support educators working in local educational agencies, community-based organizations, and other partners to understand the importance of playful learning experiences. In part two, we'll continue the topics today for educators to hear about best practices for designing learning activities that are inclusive, meaningful, and play-based across all preschool through third grade classrooms and family childcare homes. The final part of the webinar series will elevate best practices for our educators to support their students. The first and second part of the series will focus on different strategies to incorporate playful learning into the school and program day. So I will be handing this over to Shanna to start the webinar and get into the real content by sharing about the continuum of play. So as we move to that next slide, Shanna, I am tapping you.
Thank you, Sarah. Play is a critical component to aligning developmentally appropriate practice and coherence across the early years. Play is the most natural way for children to explore, discover, and learn. Play-based learning supports children's learning and development across cognitive, social, and emotional and physical domains. These are all foundational domains that can be included in the classroom by utilizing P3 strategies that ensure a combination of child-directed, educator-guided, and educator-directed experiences. On a continuum, play is every young child's classroom. Play in every young child's classroom can and should include every type of play. That includes free play, where the educator observes, reflects, and ensures the availability of time, space, and materials that are responsive to children's interests. It should include inquiry, where educators extend child-initiated ideas interest, and explorations by asking questions and providing opportunities for investigation. There should be collaborative play where an educator uses opportunities to play with children to incorporate targeted skill development into their play. So for example, supporting math skills by introducing pretend money into the children's grocery store. It should also include playful learning, where educators design targeted learning activities that are play-based, for example, putting on a puppet show or conducting a scavenger hunt. And finally, learning games, where educators engage children in prescribed activities with rules designed to facilitate specific skill development, usually in literacy and math. So for example, matching games, dice games, or word games. Our youngest learners thrive when more of their time is spent engaged in play-based learning activities that are child-directed. The CDE is dedicated to supporting educators as they grow their classroom strategies to support playful learning in the P3 classrooms that not only promote active engagement to increase opportunities for learning, but also inclusivity, creativity, and joyful activities as children explore and learn through their most natural way for them, play. I will now transition to Sterling, who will share about how the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, or ELOP, incorporates playful learning in their daily enrichment activities.
Thanks, Shanna. The Expanded Learning Opportunities Program was created to provide enrichment opportunities, including fine arts, career technical education, recreation, physical fitness, and prevention activities. In addition, this was designed to expand the horizons of youth through activities that embrace the philosophy that play and learning go hand in hand, and provide outdoor opportunities to support healthy development and learning. Next slide, please. This program has an ongoing $4 billion apportionment for LEAs to holistically support students before school, after school, and during non-school days. These apportionment amounts are scheduled to increase to $5 billion in 25-26. And as a reminder, the System of Support for Expanded Learning, or SSEL, is available to support LEAs with program design for students in TK through 6th grade and beyond. Back to you, Valentina.
Thank you, Sterling. It is always a pleasure to have you with us supporting California educators as we encourage more playful learning across the P3 continuum and all aspects of students' days that is rigorous, joyful, and meaningful as children continue to learn, grow, and continue to learn everything. Next, I am extremely excited to introduce our guest speaker of the day, Jennifer Zosh. Jennifer M. Zosh, PhD, is a professor of human development and family studies at Penn State University's Brandywine campus. As the director of the Brandywine Child Development Lab, she studies how infants and young children learn about the world around them. Her areas of expertise and publication include playful learning, the impact of technology on children and families, working memory, mathematical cognition, and language acquisition. A major driving force in her career is the dissemination and translation of scientific discoveries to the public. This translational work has appeared on The Conversation, PBS Parent, The Huffington Post, the Brookings Institution, the Joan Gant Cooney Center, NPR Radio Times, and beyond. She also serves on advisory boards for organizations as a scientific consultant for public and private organizations, and as a speaker for Ready Nation's Brain Science Speakers Bureau. She received her bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Delaware and her PhD in psychology and brain sciences from the Johns Hopkins University. Next slide, please. Take it away, Jennifer.
Great, thank you so much, Valentina. Hello from the East Coast, everyone. I just want to start by saying I'm really inspired because I'm recognizing the importance of the work that all of you in this Zoom room are doing, right? We have 500 people here who are taking time out of their schedule to come together to think about play, playful learning, and early childhood development. So I'm thrilled today to talk to you about what I've learned and what the science of learning is telling us about how young children learn and how playful learning is a really great way for us to leverage how brains are designed to learn. Next slide, please. So I would like to start with an acknowledgement that childhood today is different than it was 5, 10, or even 15 years ago. How our children are spending their time is different, and there's little doubt that these differences are meaningful, right? From young children using iPads alone to devices being commonplace in our homes and in our schools, children experience a different childhood than we have. I think any of us who've been in a restaurant would acknowledge that, right? We see a very different childhood for today's children. Next slide, please. These changes extend from Fortnite and virtual reality to the constantly updating content on YouTube. There's no doubt that children today not only experience childhood in a fundamentally different way, but that these changes are only increasing and our technology is becoming more and more prevalent in the lives of children. Next slide, please. And while all of these changes are happening, everyone in this room is tasked with preparing children for today, for success today in school. We want our children to learn to be deep thinkers, to leave each year and each grade learning all that they can. We want them to excel inside and outside of the classroom, knowing that what we are doing in these early years helps build the foundation for all that will come. How our children do early on can help set the stage for them as they enter adolescence, adulthood, and a future that we can't even imagine yet. So this is a lot of pressure for all 616 of you in this room, but it's also a lot of pressure for parents, and it results in a lot of pressure on children as well. Next slide, please. And I think it's also important to start out by thinking about the world we are preparing children to lead. It's important to acknowledge that the job of today's educators is also different than it's ever been before. I can't think of a time in which the future is so unknown. Today's adults need to prepare our children for a tomorrow we can't even fully imagine. From self-driving cars to artificial intelligence to jobs and occupations that have not even been invented, the challenge we face is how do we prepare our children for this unknown future? Next slide, please. I also want to acknowledge and take a moment to acknowledge the very real realities facing today's children and families. These same pressures are also facing today's teachers and all of you in this room. We have things from a pandemic and potentially future pandemics in our lifetimes, structural inequality, poverty, racism, bias, sexism, looming recession, inflation, suffering mental health, teacher shortages, vanishing reproductive rights, shrinking social supports, hate, worldwide unrest, discrimination, lack of housing, distrust of science, AI revolution, domestic violence, hunger, gun violence, and so on. This is also known as my slide of doom. But I'd like to also say we shouldn't despair. I wanted to name the very real challenges facing today's families, educators, and decision makers, but I am a strengths-based person, and I will argue that there is a path forward here. Next slide, please. So I think that there is a reason to have hope. Next slide, please. I see both adults and children as up to the task of facing these challenges head on. These are not impossible tasks. They may feel that way, but they're not. Children are equipped with everything they need for success today and to excel in tomorrow's unknown. And I think that their equipment to meet this challenge is twofold. First, they are equipped with incredible power, the power that comes from their innate drive to play and to engage in the world. Next slide, please. And second, they can harness one of the most powerful resources there are, the people around them. The importance of the people around children cannot be understated. So I'm going to say it again. The importance of the people around our children cannot be understated. And this is where today's teachers and school decision makers come in. So what I want to do is explore these two tools, the power of play and the role of others in supporting children today and preparing them for an unknown tomorrow. So that's what I'm going to explore in our next little time together. And the first place I'd like to start is to consider what we mean when we think about education. Next slide, please. So to do so, I want to explore what we mean in terms of the goals of education, and then I'll talk about what the science is telling us about how children learn. Next slide, please. I think a really great place to start is to think about the goals of education and how these goals inform our practices, our policies, and our decisions. When thinking about the traditional goals of education, there's traditionally been a concrete focus on content. When we make sure that we know children know what they need to know when it comes to reading, writing, mathematics, science, and so on. We asked how we can deposit information into children's brains so that it's easy for them to recall it and be able to use it. This is one model of education, and it's been the most traditional model over the last few decades. But in considering the goals of education today, in the context of those two competing challenges of preparing children for an unknown future and for success in today's world, the 21st century goal of education is more inclusive. We want to support children to, yes, acquire content, but also be happy, healthy, thinking, caring, and social beings so they can become collaborative, creative, competent, and responsible citizens tomorrow. Next slide, please. Next slide. Great. A really useful framework is given to us in thinking about the 21st century approach to education by Kathy Hirsch-Pasek and Roberta Golinkoff. They call their model the 6 C's, and they highlight a breadth of skills approach to thinking about the skills necessary for a changing world. They highlight that for success both today and in the future, children will need the following skill set. First, children will need to learn the skill of collaboration so that they are able to understand the importance of and develop the skill set to collaborate with those around them. Whether it's building a block tower or working together on a calculus problem, the skills of collaboration are critical for today and tomorrow. Another important skill is that of communication, learning how to communicate one's own ideas, listen to others, and communicate our thoughts, our feelings, our ideas, our worries. Importantly, this model also does not ignore the importance of content. The argument is not that content is unimportant, but that it's just one skill within a dynamic suite of skills that is necessary. And let's face it, we live in a world in which content is available like never before, when we can quickly pull up information literally at our fingertips. But it is still important for children to understand and to acquire content knowledge, but I would argue that it's simply not enough. Children also need to develop the skills of critical thinking. They need to understand not just that information exists, but how to critically evaluate it, to think about the ways in which information connects, and to be able to evaluate the trustworthiness of that information. Importantly, it's not just enough to have the information or be able to access it or be able to evaluate it. You also need to be able to generate new ideas and or express creative innovation. Today's children will be faced with challenges that are huge, some of which we know about and some of which we do not, whether it's solving climate change, facing a pandemic, or thinking about new ways of existing in an ever-changing world. We want our children to be creative innovators. Finally, children need to develop the confidence that they will need to face today and tomorrow's challenges. Children need to be able to face failure, learn from it, and come back stronger. They need the confidence to express their ideas, try out new and unusual solutions, and have the confidence to realize that not everything may work, but it's still important to try and to learn from our mistakes, something we know is always a challenge for children and adults in general. So next slide, please. We also want to center and build upon the cultures of our students and families. We need to know what they care about and prioritize who they are and have that as the center of how we approach kind of our classrooms and how we help educate children. Next slide, please. So now we've laid out 6 C's and these big challenges that exist in the world. Now what? Where do we go from here? How is it that we can support children's acquisition of the 6 C's? How is it that we will be able to support children in learning not just content, but the skills that they need for tomorrow's unknown future? Luckily, I believe there is an answer. Next slide, please. Over the last few decades, a new type of scientific study has come into focus, the science of learning. This area of study brings together research and insights from psychology, education, computer science, cognitive science, and others to truly examine how people learn. So, given that research is giving us insights that we've never had before, my colleagues and I, over the last 5 or 10 plus years, have started to really want to think about how do we harness all of this information? How do we harness the characteristics that lead to learning? So as developmental researchers, we were interested in determining exactly what kind of thinking, what kinds of experiences lead to increased learning. Next slide, please. And I'll tell you the answer that keeps coming up is this idea of playful learning. The science of learning suggests that the tools we need to help prepare children for success today and tomorrow is already available to us. Namely, it's a pedagogical approach that is based in playful learning. Next slide, please. And here's why. We know that children are naturally drawn to play. And it turns out that this natural inclination to play is not something that's special to humans. Work by Burkhardt and others has suggested that play is this innate drive beyond humans. Octopi, some birds, other species. I just saw a news report a few weeks ago that bees naturally play as a way to learn about their world. And this is the key I can't stress enough. Play is a way to learn about the world, no matter what that world looks like. And I think this is the reason why children will not just be okay in today's changing world and tomorrow's unknown future. Children can use play, something that's natural to them, to learn and succeed in any world. They're using play today to learn through their experiences, even when those experiences are different than the ones we have. Now I'll say what usually happens at this point is people agree with me that play is generally good and it's good for kids, they learn, but the disconnect comes in when we think about how play can be used to support real life learning goals, such as literacy and math, but all of the 6 C's. I think that the reason this happens is because we tend to think of play as one thing, and that's what I'm going to talk about next. So in this next slide, please. In this next portion of the talk, I'm going to talk about how we can leverage the power of play in the classroom or in family childcare homes or in our own homes. But there's one piece of the puzzle we haven't yet addressed. Exactly what is play? Next slide, please. We tend to see play as totally open-ended play, where children have free range to do whatever they want, when they want, with what they want. Adults are typically out of the picture entirely. And it's true, this is the kind of play most of us think about when we remember playing as children. It's the kind of play that would happen when your parents told you to go outside until the streetlights came on, or when you transformed the dining room table into a fort with blankets. But what my colleagues and I have argued is that instead of thinking about play just as free play, we need to start to consider that spectrum of play, one that includes the kinds of play that happen when adults curate great experiences for children. Like you heard in the introduction, from providing access to a great game or providing materials that help you create a store in your classroom. Next slide, please. So this is a spectrum of play that my colleagues and I created. This spectrum encompasses various types of play, from the play young children create on their own to the play that we help them to create. And what we propose is that these types of experiences, from free play and guided play to games, are all important parts of a playful learning spectrum and can be leveraged in the classroom to meet learning goals. And that's the key here. The idea here is not play is good, just let kids play and all of a sudden literacy is accomplished. Instead, by thinking about this as a spectrum, we can see how we can leverage different places on this spectrum to meet the goals that we have. Next slide, please. So let's take a closer look at each type of play. With free play, we see here that the child initiates, directs, and runs the experience. We know that adults may play supportive roles, but there is little structure. We know that free play is linked to executive function, self-regulation, social skills, self-esteem, health and well-being, and even learning in certain domains like math. Guided play is child-directed but adult-supported. This is the kind of play that happens when we, the adults, have a learning goal in mind, but we simply help our children to explore and learn so that they can arrive at new insights. This is the kind of play we do when we sit down next to a child and help them complete a puzzle. But if, and only if, we still allow them to be in a driver's seat. For guided play to be true play, children need to remain in the forefront. We've all had those experiences in which we want to help children learn, But we know that if we take a step back and simply support our children to get there, that learning is much more rich. The moment is much more meaningful. I still remember the moment I learned to tie my shoes. My parents had tried to teach me, taught me some rhymes, and reassured me that I would figure it out. But it wasn't until that moment when I was outside along the side of my house next to the tomato garden that I got it. I had that moment of insight as I was just trying things out on my own. This is the same kind of thrill that our young ones get when they put that last piece in a puzzle that they struggled on to put together. Or when our older ones come in from playing outside and have discovered how to use materials in the neighborhood to create a fort. There is something magical about that moment. And I think most of us in this room know that sparkle in the eye I'm talking about. In this type of play, we provide the materials and a little bit of guidance, but children are still in the forefront. In the words of a colleague, Kathy Hirsch-Pasek, in guided play, we simply set up the mise en place, or as my fellow Top Chef fans know, mise en place is simply the preparation that happens before cooking a meal. In guided play, we set up the materials, we constrain that tinkering space to help children arrive at those insights a little easier. And the evidence from the science of learning tells us that this type of play seems to be especially powerful for learning. Games are similar to guided play in that fun is at the forefront and children are in control, but there are also some constraints. Whether it's the rules of a game or the rules of pretend play, when we play games, we're forced to self-regulate. We have to wait our turn, we have to stop ourselves from doing just what we want. And research suggests that not only do we build executive function skills like self-regulation, but we are also better able to learn things like math and language, because games and play and learning go hand in hand. Next slide, please. Another way of looking at playful learning strategies is this graphic that we started this webinar with. It's shared and comes from the California's Great Start Transition to Elementary School Toolkit. It highlights play-based learning strategies across preschool through third grade, focusing on child-directed, educator-guided, and educator-directed play. Next slide, please. This tree graphic is also included in the California's Great Start Transition to Elementary School Toolkit and will be reviewed in more detail in part 2 of the Playful Learning webinar series. It's a great resource on how to incorporate playful learning in the classroom. The graphic does a wonderful job of providing a visual of how learning can happen in the classroom with more opportunities for play and explaining that learning thrives in an environment that celebrates and affirms cultural and linguistic diversity, actively combats racism and pursues equity, embraces inclusion, and promotes belonging for each and every child. Each leaf of the tree represents how to incorporate playful learning through learning centers, small group math and literacy instruction, music, movement, and mindfulness, read alouds, community building and teacher modeling, and the roots of the tree represent strengthening the students' home language skills as well as building socio-emotional skills. Next slide, please. So I've argued that playful learning is a really powerful approach, but why? Next slide, please. So one of the things you might be saying to yourself is, sure, play is fun and it helps kids to develop socially, but we're faced with claims of a learning crisis. We are confronted with scary headlines and world education rankings that leave much to be desired. But I'm here today to tell you about the research that supports the idea that play is not just something fun for children, but it helps them to learn. And crucially, it helps them to learn things like math, STEM, language, scientific thinking, and so forth. And it does so for a very important reason. Play naturally harnesses the characteristics that lead to learning. And that's not just what Dr. Jennifer Zosh thinks, but it's what the science of learning has taught us. In our 2015 article, my colleagues and I argued that the science of learning has told us how children learn, and it's our job as educators and researchers to translate this knowledge, in this case, into the digital experience of children, in the case of educational apps. In this paper, we argued for us to put education back in educational apps should support the pillars of learning. Soon after, I worked with the LEGO Foundation to think about the pillars of learning and about how play naturally leverages those pillars and is a powerful pedagogical tool for learning. So let's explore those pillars. Next slide, please. Together, this work suggests that there are 5 key pillars or characteristics of learning, 5 ways in which we can support learning inside and outside of the classroom. Namely, when children are actively engaged or minds-on in an iterative, meaningful, joyful, and socially interactive experience, we see that learning is maximized. And it just so happens that playful learning naturally harnesses these characteristics. Next slide, please. So I'll do a little dive into each one of these characteristics. First, joy is really important. We know when it comes to play, it isn't play without joy. But one thing to note is that play isn't always joyful all the time. We need to think beyond moving just extended joy all the time, but also think about surprise and that thrill of getting it. It was not fun when I could not tie my shoes for a really long period of time, but that moment in which I got it was pure joy. And all of us have seen that in the classroom. Next slide, please. If any of you have access to the Developmentally Appropriate Practice book by NAEYC, you'll see that I explore these concepts in greater detail. And I think about how we can see these characteristics in our classrooms, from classrooms in which there's low engagement with this characteristic. For instance, there are happy posters on the wall, but listening and being quiet are central classroom rules, to high kind of engagement with these characteristics, in which teachers are actively encouraging curiosity and they design lessons to follow the interests of the class. So there are ways for us to think about what we do in our classroom right now and how we can create further engagement with each one of these pillars. Next slide, please. When we think about active engagement, what we mean here is minds-on thinking, that critical deep thinking, hypothesis testing, symbolic thinking, and mental manipulation in an approach that's not distracted. This is when you are clued into what you are doing. And we all have seen children be really clued in to play and also not clued in to some of the things we want them to learn. So how was it that we really leverage this active engagement? I would argue it's through playful learning. Next slide, please. When we think about meaningfulness, what we mean here is connecting learning to existing knowledge, seeing it in the outside world, and contextualizing the learning that we're doing. This goes beyond kind of drill and kill to this deeper learning that's meaningful, that children can see how what they're learning connects to what they already know and how that connects them to the world around them. Next slide, please. We also think about the iterative characteristic, and this is the idea that we build knowledge through a process, not a one-time deposit of information into our brains. This finds foundation in Piaget's constructivist framework, and we can see this in the classroom as well. Next slide, please. So for instance, we can think about a classroom in which students are given one example versus a classroom in which teachers encourage mistakes and promote learning as a dynamic process. We can think about a classroom in which there's low engagement when facts are presented while exploration and guessing are discouraged, versus high engagement when teachers ask why, how, what do you think, and why. So we can think about how do we create activities in our classrooms that help engage with these pillars of learning to help maximize learning in any of the activities that we do. Next slide, please. Social interaction is also critically important. Garrigay suggested that the transmission of information between individuals acts as a kind of natural pedagogy. So in other words, our best resources for learning are those around us, both from what we can learn from them, but also how us interacting with others and teaching others helps us to learn even more. So this social interaction that we see is really important as a pathway to support learning. Next slide, please. And again, I'm going to argue here that the evidence is clear. Next slide, please. Research suggests that play and playful learning enhances social regulation in terms of collaboration, language and literacy, such as communication, STEM, content learning, hypothesis testing, critical thinking, and even creativity, right? This gets us to those 6 C's that we started out with. Next slide, please. And also to turn back to the very beginning, to my slide of doom, we also know that play is related to emotional regulation and that reduces stress. It can serve as a protective factor that helps improve well-being, and it reduces anger, stress, and conflict. Also things we want to see in our classrooms and largely in our world. Next slide, please. Play also helps in terms of the development of social regulation. It helps support the development of impulse and emotion control, self-guidance of thought and behavior, planning, self-reliance, socially responsible behavior, attention, memory, and so forth. Next slide, please. So as we wrap up, I want us to think about how we've learned about how viewing play is a spectrum. It helps us empower us to think about the different ways that we can teach children. And we also cover the idea that the characteristics of how we learn are naturally leveraged when we use play to teach children. So the next step is just for all of us to think about how do we implement this across ages and contexts. Next slide, please. Importantly, the science of learning suggests that playful learning is not just a mechanism for getting young children to learn, but is in fact a powerful pedagogy for teaching across ages and across contexts. So now we will explore some existing models for implementing playful learning in classrooms. And in fact, we're starting to see this really take off, and many ministries of education are beginning to embrace whole child pedagogy. For instance, the Ontario Ministry of Education states the purpose of the program is to establish a strong foundation for learning in the early years, and to do so in a safe and caring, play-based environment that promotes the physical, social, emotional, and cognitive development of all children. And the Singapore Ministry of Education states that to achieve our mission, the Ministry of Education will provide our children with a balanced and well-rounded education, develop them to their full potential, and nurture them into lifelong learners and good citizens, conscious of their responsibilities to family, community, and country. So what this is saying is that play and playful learning is taking off globally, that this is not just a thing that should be in certain schools. This is something that is useful for all children everywhere. Next slide, please. So to wrap up, I'd like to argue that we need to consider the goals of 21st century education in all that we do, and that playful learning, this idea of free play, guided play, games, the spectrum of learning, supports learning and development. Joyful, actively engaged, meaningful, iterative, and socially interactive experiences support learning, and that this works across contexts and ages with direct links to culture, building on our strengths and existing capacities. Next slide, please. And with that, I will turn it back to our organizers, and I'm really excited to hear from our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. We are so glad that we were able to hear your presentation. Look at all of the reactions from the participants that are here with us. We have 662 participants, and you are getting a lot of love from the reactions. So we really appreciate your time being here with us today and being able to spread the word of playful learning across preschool through third grade.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay. So next, we are going to be moving on to our panel discussion. To get us started, on the next slide, we will begin by introducing our moderator for today's panel discussion. Next slide, please. Our moderator for today's discussion panel is Dr. Lily Moffitt. Dr. Lily Moffitt is an education research and evaluation consultant in the Early Education Division at the CDE. Dr. Moffitt supports updates to the preschool/transitional kindergarten learning foundations, desired results developmental profile assessment, or the DRDP, curriculum guidance, and leads many preschool to third grade research efforts at the department. Thank you, Lily. We are glad to have you here to moderate our panel discussion. Lily will now be introducing our wonderful panelists that we have here today that will be engaging with her in conversations around playful learning across the P through third grade continuum. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Valentina. I'm really glad to be here today to moderate this important topic. And to begin, next slide, please. I want to introduce our panelists that will be participating in our panel discussion. And I'd like to start with Craig McKinley, who is the principal of Eden Gardens Elementary School in Hayward, California. He began his career as an elementary third grade and physical education teacher. He believes in equal opportunity for all students, serving on the board of directors for the California Association of Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. And before becoming a principal, he spent 7 years as the physical education coordinator at the Alameda County Office of Education. In this role, he provided professional development and technical assistance to Alameda County's 18 school districts. He also is a part-time lecturer at California State East Bay, teaching methods of physical education for the classroom teacher. And during his time off from school, Mr. McKinley enjoys fishing, golfing, and coaching baseball. All right, second, we have Dr. Julie Montali, who is the Executive Director of Early Learning for the Sacramento County Office of Education. She has managed large school district preschool elementary programs, served as a director of new teacher support for K-12, and supported families and school sites as a psychologist for over 25 years. She has trained and coached numerous administrators through her Principal Early Learning Academy, and she is committed to leading the work for engaging, caring, rich early learning experiences for all children, with an emphasis on language and social emotional development anchored in arts integration. Her current work involves collaborating with various districts, agencies, and early learning leaders statewide in the planning and implementation for UPK. Third, we have Doug Henderson, and Doug is the Director STEAM for Val Verde Unified School District in Paris, California. He spent the first 19 years of his career as a biology teacher before moving to the district office to coordinate STEAM opportunities for all students. The underlying core principles of STEAM education is problem solving, and Doug has worked to give students opportunities to apply their 21st century skills, like we heard in the presentation, towards a problem by creating an infrastructure that enhances the iterative design principles on each campus using reimagined spaces, STEAM teachers, and curricula. These conducive learning spaces include STEAM labs that serve as the hub of engineering for all K-8 schools, outdoor classrooms, gardens, and CTE classrooms that help prepare students with the skills needed in our local workforce. All right, next slide. Got 2 more. Okay, we also have Jennifer Adcock, who is the coordinator of Universal Pre-Kindergarten in Moreno Valley Unified School District, where she supports and advocates for students, families, and early educators. With over 32 years of experience in public education, Jennifer has demonstrated her commitment to serving children and families through her service as an elementary teacher, special education teacher, elementary administrator, and early education administrator. In addition to her work in Moreno Valley Unified, Jennifer also serves as chairperson of the Riverside County Local Child Care and Development Planning Council and serves on the executive board of the Riverside County Consortium for Early Learning Services. Jennifer is dedicated to collaborating with all stakeholders working together to ensure all children thrive through access to developmentally informed, high-quality learning experiences. And finally, we have Joy Slater, who is a seasoned early childhood educator with an undergraduate degree in child psychology, a multiple subject teaching credential, and a master's degree in ECE curriculum development. She has years of experience as a preschool teacher, family daycare provider, director of programs for a state federal infant toddler center, director of a parent participation preschool, plus many years as a kindergarten first and second grade teacher. All of these experiences have led to her current passion as a TK teacher and a TK specialist. In addition to teaching TK, she provides training and presents to other early childhood educators throughout Northern California. Joy's favorite times when not working in the ECE field are when she is outside playing with her own grandchildren. All right, that was an impressive bunch to get through all of you, but we really are so excited to have everyone here today and to learn from you all and to discuss playful learning. All right, next slide. So before we take the slides down, I just kind of wanted to go through what our panel discussion questions will be, and then we'll take the slides down so you can see all of us and we can just be in conversation. So the questions we'll be covering today is, why do you believe playful learning is powerful? How do you encourage playful learning in your programs? And when parents or educators view play as a break from learning, how do you encourage or educate on the benefits of play in your programs? And then kind of going back to the presentation about how playful learning in the classroom is a balance between child-directed and sometimes more educated, guided, or directed. And so how does your program encourage and support educators in providing this balance of child-adult involvement? All right, so let's take down the slides and then we can kind of just see everyone and kind of engage in discussion. So for our first question, I'm going to start with Julie. And I think this, you would be great for this first question, considering your role. So why do you believe playful learning is powerful?
Well, Lily, how many hours do you have? So I'd love to start with just a saying. Somebody shared this with me probably, 10, 15 years ago. I'm not even sure who the author is, but it's, you never want to get on a plane where the pilot learned to fly from worksheets. And I think that kind of says it all. After 35 years in education, from all the littles all the way through, high school kids, for 35 years, I've just seen where we really had to sort of battle a misconception that play and sophisticated, complex learning are mutually exclusive. And the actually answer is exactly what Jennifer was talking about. And it's really based in this neuroscience. We have so much evidence to the contrary. And I just love what she was talking about. What I try to do with the administrators that I work with is kind of start with that. What's the brain-based science behind this? So when we talk about joyful learning, we're talking about actual neurochemical changes in the brain. That dopamine increases with the joy that's increasing. Learning is so much easier. I mean, think about when you are stressed out and what happens to you as somebody who is trying to learn something maybe new, or if you're trying to share your learning or produce information. If you're stressed out and anxious, we get that brain freeze, right? So one of the examples I will just quickly kind of tell you about is that I've seen has been probably the biggest evidence for me in my career around the power of playful learning is I spent 12 years in Fresno Unified, and we had pre-K, TK, and K working through a visual arts integrated curriculum. You can see on my back wall, I still have one of our collaborative pieces from our 4-year-olds, if you can believe it. And they were studying Monet and Degas through these rich children's literature, gorgeous vocabulary. Kitchen sets were turned into a Paris cafe. Children were painting and trying to sell their paintings to others, wearing a beret. The vocabulary was incredible. The math and science that was, we were able to connect with it. And to see people walk into, a first grade or second grade classroom and think, oh my goodness, this is much more basic than I saw in the early learning crowd, the pre-K, TKK. I think it's really a testament to this is not for just little or big, it's for everybody. And it's all based in the how the brain changes when given opportunity. It's truly, literally changing the brain, recruiting those neural networks and pathways, bringing new information, hooking on to what's familiar. I'm so excited about the topic, but we have so many great panelists. I want to share the space.
Thank you, Julie. It's always a joy to kind of hear your what you're thinking and especially on this topic. And you're so eloquent. And I love that example of you don't want someone who learned on worksheets to fly a plane. That makes me scared. All right, I'm going to go over to Joy. Do you have anything to add to this question about why do you believe playful learning is powerful?
Yeah, in fact, Julie, I love that you gave an example, because I also feel like examples help us to, make a tangible out of something that might be a little bit, play itself ends up being a little bit, what does that really mean? So everything that you said, Julie, is wonderful and perfect, and feeds right into my little friend Zachary that I had in my class, who was a shy little person, but brilliant in the brain, and couldn't find a focus in the classroom. And it took me a couple of months of trying to figure him out and talking to his family and what are his interests, and finally focused on, he was a scientist at heart. And he took our classroom to the solar system, literally, and got to be the leader, and took his shy soul and got to be the leader in the classroom. But they built a rocket ship that they could play in. And so they had the dramatic play going on, but all the while they were learning about they each designed their own planets. That's not really true. It isn't that everybody designed it. It's that those who were interested in what he was doing, and he helped them to design their own planet and give it a name and draw pictures. And then as a team, they also developed questions that they got to ask the NASA person that visited our classroom, because it was, part of what you could do when you were studying science, studying NASA, studying the universe. And it was brilliant, child-led, which I feel like is a super key to how a play-based curriculum can grow. And while it was just for Zachary, and in particular at the beginning, every single child in that room gained from his questions. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And I love how you bring that kind of on the ground TK teacher, perspectives is very valuable. I think before I move on to the next question, Craig, do you want to add anything about this question about how playful learning is powerful?
Yeah, definitely. I think that for us at Eden Gardens, especially in our TK class that is this type of program, the kids are much more happier, it seems to me, right? And there's just joy. They love their first experience coming to school is awesome. And I continually hear from parents, I can't believe how excited my child wants to come to school every day. And I think also Mr. McKinley gets less calls to come down to the TK classroom to talk to students who have had an issue of some form. Those have been reduced dramatically within our program since it started.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder from your perspective too, as a principal, and you have across all of these grades, have you seen kind of the powerful role of play in some of the early elementary grades, like as not just in TK, but in kinder, first, second, third, just thinking about how we're in the P3 space here?
Right. Yes, it's been definitely a journey. And I think, I got one teacher on board with this, and then, teachers talk, right? And then the next thing you know, I have now all the kindergarten teachers are involved in this. The first grade has begun to explore this type of program. So I think that, it's been slow, but the power that the teachers see and through having conversations with teachers that are implementing this helps to bring more folks on board.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to the next question, and we'll go to Jennifer and Doug, start for this one. But the next question is, how do you encourage playful learning in your program? So Jennifer, can we start with you? I know you're not spotlit anymore, but I know you're still on.
Yes, I would love to start. And I do apologize. I'm unexpected. And so I have the video off today. But
Okay,
I would like.
You're breaking up a little bit, so maybe we can keep trying, and then if you're still breaking up, I might move on to Doug just in the interest of time. But why don't you try again? See if we can hear you.
Okay, sure. Is this better now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you.
So one thing that's just vital is to make play a focus and to make it visible. And one way we've done that in Moreno Valley School District is we had a summer conference this past summer, totally focused on play. And that just elevated the importance of play. It wasn't just one workshop at a different conference. It was an entire day's conference focused on play. And we invited our preschool and our TK teachers, and then we expect that in the future. This is our first year, will be an annual. And so that's one way that we elevate that importance of play and encourage. And another aspect to ensure that as administrators, we realize that teachers cannot work alone to implement play.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, you're cutting out again.
Teachers really do require administrator.
Oh, Jennifer, you're cutting out again. So maybe if you might want to try joining on your phone, because I definitely want to hear what you have to say.
Will.
Okay, awesome. So Doug, let's switch to you to answer this question and see if Jennifer can get back on. So how do you, I guess you're the STEAM, just to remind everyone, Doug he's the STEAM guy at his district. So how do you encourage playful learning in your programs?
First of all, I showed my business card, which is STEAM guy. I'm going to change it to STEAM guy. So I appreciate that. So this has kind of been a long journey. So I'm going to talk about some things that we did over I'm in my 8th year running this. And one of the first things that we kind of knew we needed to do was create spaces, right? So we need spaces to play. We need spaces to engage in playful learning. And so we built these STEAM labs, started on about 8 years ago, finished them about 7 years ago, which was kind of a hub of engineering and play for the campus. Doesn't mean that you could only do those things in a campus, but we want to have like a central location to where this would happen. We found out something key though, which was if you build it, they don't always come. So now we had to actually kind of figure out, well, how do I make sure that it's an equitable thing for all kids in which every kid gets the opportunity to engage in this playful learning? So we hired STEAM teachers. Now they're going to be in all of our STEAM labs. And what's going to happen here is they're the ones that are focused on creativity. So when you look at our portrait of a graduate, it's creativity, which we heard in the presentation. It's critical thinking, which you heard in the presentation. And it's collaboration, which you heard in the presentation, because those are all key things, especially coming out of the pandemic, the SEL and the connection to other students and the collaboration on group projects and that kind of stuff. And we all know the research also tells you that if you got creativity at the core of what you're learning, an engaged learner is going to learn more. So how do I keep them engaged in creativity, engineering, that kind of stuff? And so we built a system in which now every single student and every single teacher in every single classroom is going to have the access to these kinds of things. Because in case you don't know, elementary teachers kind of got a lot on their plate. They got a lot of things they got to do. And so this type of thing was not exactly something that they thought was important. And still they start seeing how much more engaged. And for question 1, I actually wanted to add, like, hearing about a kid who's a problem has been a problem for every single teacher that's not engaged, they're defiant, and you throw them in a STEAM lab, and now that's your leader. That's the person up front explaining to all the other kids, this is what you want to do, this is what you got to do here, because it's a different type of education and learning and a way to learn, and those kids identify. So you're going to reach a lot of kids. So it was really tied to making sure that everything was tied to that creativity and collaboration and critical thinking. And so it's been a long process in getting that together, but we make sure every kid has access to that now.
That's awesome. And I like your connection back to the 6 C's in the presentation. And also just so others know, STEAM is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So that's the contents part of the 6 C's. But then you're also getting those other pieces of the 6 C's as well, like the creativity and and instilling confidence and all of
Problem
those.
solving. Yeah, they got to solve problems. Yeah, that's
Big
it.
one. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jennifer, are you back? Do you want to finish up your response to this question?
I am back, but I want to make sure that I'm clear before I get started.
You are clear. I will interrupt you if you're not.
Excellent news. Just want to also check. I did talk a little bit about a summer conference we did. Was that clear?
Yeah, I think the first part of that. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. I just don't want to repeat. So a couple of other things I wanted to share is that as administrators, we need to realize that our teachers cannot work alone to implement play-based learning. Our teachers really need our support as administrators and frankly, each other's support. But it's important. And it's important not just to say that play-based learning is important and we need to allow play, but to really be on the ground as administrators supporting each other and not only developing that theoretical understanding of the science of play and why play-based learning is not only important but a necessity, but also knowing what that looks like when we go into a classroom. When we go into a play-based classroom, it's going to be a little bit noisy, might be a lot noisy. There might be a lot of things around. There might be a lot of movement on the playground. There might be some play behaviors that look a little risky. And some of us might have to take a breath and know that what we're watching is not only okay, it's actually wonderful. And so we really do need to work with each other as administrators to develop that understanding. And one thing I know we're doing in our district is we are going to be doing some work with our administrators to know what are we looking for? What is a sign of excellence and high quality learning activities as we go into our preschool through third grade classrooms? And how does that continuum of play look? How does that change over time? And how can we support all the engagement and play in the classroom? And then one final thing I'd like to share, I'm at a leadership summit today, and it's our district leadership summit. And so we can't forget the importance of modeling play. And I think that as I picture our superintendent on stage, dancing around, dressed in a pilot's uniform, representing our theme for this next year of Go Beyond. And anyone who sees him on stage would know that play is desirable, that play is fun, it is engaging, and it makes a difference not only for children, but for adult learners as well. And so that modeling across all aspects is also important.
Thank you. And your comment about the early, administrators and them, teaching them kind of what to look for and district staff too, as they go out into these classrooms. I think that would be a great resource to develop, almost like an administrator kind of checklist of like, this is what good play and looks like in the classroom. That would be great to develop. But
absolutely, if anyone wants to join in, I have a little bit of a start on that. So anybody wants to join in, love to do it together.
That sounds great. Yeah. Awesome. Just wanted to see, Craig, did you have anything to add on this question about encouraging playful learning in your programs in your school?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things is just providing the time for teachers to one, do the work, but also to go and observe play-based learning, happening in classrooms. And I think providing that time and space for professional development and to work together are very important to the success of this type of a program.
Awesome.
Lily, can I add one more quick thing as well?
Absolutely.
I love that Jennifer brought up the point that you're going to go in a classroom and it's going to be noisier. We know that we talked a little bit about the neuroscience sort of underpinning, but there's also really great research around collaborative dialogue. And so we want noisy classrooms. Of course, we want them, they're on point and talking about the content. It's not just like, what'd you do yesterday or Saturday at the playground, but it's really important that we realize that there's great research. Many people are familiar with Hattie Fisher and Fry's work And we know collaborative dialogue has a 0.82 effect size. That basically means 2 years worth of learning in 1 year's time. So having those really rich conversations goes hand in glove with playful learning, and is another side of this, the evidence that backs up why we think that this is not only suggested or recommended, but it really is critical, as Jennifer noted.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. All right, I'll move to question 3. And I think, Joy, I'll start with you on this one. So when parents or educators view play as a break from learning, how do you encourage or educate on the benefits of play in your programs?
Well, first of all, I love that people are advocating for administration to come into the classrooms and see what play looks like. I think every ECE person wants to know that their administration can come in and see what they're doing and say, yes, this is what we mean. That helps us to continue going with the play and to be proud of what we're doing. I also believe that every and I'm going to speak for TK teachers, but I believe it's true for all the PK3 people, that we need to provide ourselves with knowledge and get the science behind play in our heads, so that when someone comes in and gives us a little challenge, we know how to defend what it is we're doing. In my classroom, I have stuff for grown-ups to read, not for the children to read, but for the grown-ups to read, that says, while I'm in certain areas in the classroom and I'm playing, here are all of the things that I'm also learning. And so through play, I'm hitting all of the whatever it is. And my job then is to if a child, and I'm going to go back to my little Zachary, if he's interested in science and he's interested in the solar system, I'm going to provide little things in every area for him to see. But I do that for all of the children. And the parents can come in, or the grown-ups, any grown-up that comes in can look at an area and say, oh my gosh, there are, and the measures all come from the preschool foundations, they come from the DRDP, they're from the powerful role of play, which also has something similar at the end of it. And I think it's very powerful. I think we as teachers need to defend play, defend it with science, and defend it with what we're offering in our classrooms. You should walk in and see children playing in every area of the classroom.
Thank you, Joy. Doug, do you have anything to add for this one?
Yeah, from a district lens, I remember having conversations with the I'm not saying the elementary teachers, some elementary teachers that said, you need us to teach them to read and do math and science and all this stuff. And I've only got this amount of time. I don't have time to go play in the lab. Right. So that was a conversation that I've had with some teachers. So I think part about the district level is when you are designing opportunities for this playful learning, the intentionality of what you choose and where you choose to spend your money is the hugely important thing. So I will tell you that after lots of research and looking at lots of things, the company that's got a lot of my money, and we'll call back to earlier, is Lego. So early learning Lego, that was Steam Park, that was Coding Express. I'm also in charge of CTE for the district, so I know that I have manufacturers all around me that are using complicated CNC machines that boils down to simple input versus output. If the output of your machine didn't get what you wanted, your input was wrong. Well, I could start teaching that in kinder with the Coding Express, where they just change the tile on the track and it changes directions. And if it went the wrong way, then your coding was wrong. So input, output. So being able to say, hey, that skill that's needed in the local workplace, I got to start that skill in early education. And what does it look like? And honestly, Lego has been a huge partner in all that we've done on that. Even the social emotional ones, if you haven't seen those with the faces on them. So we bought them for the principals, we bought them for the TK teachers and the preschool and whatever, because being able to get kids to use a Lego image of how they're feeling right now, because they may not want to verbally talk about it right now. Some of those things were huge in what we were trying to do in a lot of the early learning. So yeah, the creativity and all that kind of stuff that Lego brought. Then we folded in lots of other things. So I'm not saying that's the only product we did, but that was the kind of material that I was very, very particular in what I was going to look at, because yes, don't tell the teachers, but you also taught computer science standards just now. That was also folded into there, but we won't tell them about that. And then, yes, you might have also even had some ELA standards because you were asking them to explain or some conversation, that kind of stuff. So we were folding it in, and it was playtime, but it was intentional playtime, and it was intentionally purchased materials that were reaching us to the goal what we wanted, which was the creativity. We needed them to collaborate, and we needed them to solve problems. So that's my big word, intentionality.
Awesome. Yeah, that definitely connects again to the presentation we just heard about making sure that the play is intentional and being attached to a learning goal, so that it's not like you do preschool learning foundations or K-3 standards over here and then play is separate, but that there's really that integration. And it's hard to do. And I think that's why we're all here trying to learn how to do it. And it's, kind of, we're in I think it was said the 21st century space of this, but I think it's really exciting and it's an opportunity. So let's see. Julie, did you want to add anything to this question? We can also move on to the next question.
I maybe just real quickly, when we think about what Jennifer was talking about in terms of the 5 characteristics that really intersect neuroscience and the characteristics of play, Doug's brought up some great specific examples. The other one that I think is really important to think about is that socially interactive piece. And really having people understand, parents, teachers, understand that, we're hardwired to learn socially. We aren't learning in a vacuum naturally. And so I think that just sort of adding that piece to it and thinking about, again, that brain plasticity, again, literally the brain changes because of these learning experiences. And I think that's a really powerful message to everybody, right? Parents, teachers, that this is the kind of impact it can have.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll move on to our last question and I think we'll go over to Craig and Jennifer for this one, and everyone else is welcome to jump in as well. We have some time. But so playful learning in the classroom, as we heard, throughout the presentation, is a balance between child-directed, educated, guided, directed. How does your program encourage and support educators in finding or providing a balance of this child-adult involvement, especially because they're also interacting with a curriculum and there are certain things, from a district level they may have to do. And so kind of how do you achieve this balance? So Craig, as a principal, I'll ask you first and then I'll move to Jennifer.
I think that, one of the first things that when my TK teacher came and decided, this is where she wanted to go, she said to me, I want to move all my desks out of my classroom. Right. And all my tables out of my classroom. And as an administrator, you go, whoa, hold on. And as we talked through it, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Right. The kids are able to move from place to place to be able to explore. So we got rid of the desks. There's two round tables and one rectangular table. Some other things that she's kind of done that were great is the entrance to the classroom, there's a zigzag balance beam, and that's how the kids enter the room. And it's amazing to see how well the kids are just adapting to not having the typical desk, right? And not having chairs. They're on the floor. They're in different areas. They're at the puppet station. The other thing that we have that was kind of that, whoa, hold on, is she came to me and said, do you think it would be okay to have a mud kitchen? And again, that, your administrator hat comes on and says, a mud kitchen, like with actual mud in it? And she was like, yeah. And I said, okay, let's explore this. And to see that and to see the kids making mud pies, and they're paying for their mud pies, and they've named their mud kitchen, it's just been fabulous. And the one thing, as an administrator, you think, oh, here comes the phone calls from mom, my child's full of mud, dirty, and what's going on at that school, right? And I have to say, I haven't had not one of those calls, which is absolutely fabulous. And I think just being able to support them and going into the classroom and joining in, right? One of the things that they've done is they developed a card game called Blink. They named it, they developed the game, through the teacher facilitating it. And now I'm invited all the time to come in and play Blink with the kids. And it's exciting to see. And it's been fabulous. I can't say enough. I'll let Jennifer go ahead now, or Julie, I don't know who it was.
Oh, well, before we move on to Jennifer, I just want to follow up on that. Did the parents of the teachers in the TK classroom do they still feel like their children are learning too? Like,
I think yes,
positive. Okay.
It's been nothing but positive. And I think, the social emotional aspect of it has been huge, and they see that. And I think that they see that, when their children come home and they talk about their day, they're able to articulate what they did, what they learned. And so, I've had nothing but positive feedback from parents in this program.
That's awesome. All right, Jennifer, you're up next.
I would just build on some of what Craig said, and thinking of the mud kitchen, just being willing to say yes, being willing to do something different as administrator, and supporting our teachers with the time and resources to help them develop those rich environments in which play both organically happens, but also it organically happens within an intentionally designed space. And I think that the balance of that is very important to recognize. I took a note as I was reviewing some things, and there is a quote, and I just couldn't say it better, but there's a quote in the CDE publication that's that powerful role of play. And it says that it reminds us even in spontaneous learning, teachers still plan. They just make their plans rich enough to create space for the unexpected. And I just couldn't say that any better. And I think that starts to help to consider as we're looking at that balance between that child and adult involvement. If we're designing the environments in a high quality, rich, engaging way, then as teachers, we step in and out of those play activities based on what children need, based on providing, again, that continuum of play within our classrooms.
Thank you, Jennifer. Does anyone else want to add on from the group?
I want to add something to that. So the disadvantage in having children be more in control of their own education is, as a teacher, you have to be willing to let some of that go. And there's a lot of people who really want everybody to know how smart they are, right? So you got to have to set up an environment and being, I used it on the last question, I'm going to use it again. You have to be intentional in making sure that you are giving opportunities for the teachers to plan, because a more child-directed direction in which they want to go takes more planning ahead of time in order to pull this off. So this is how I use my STEAM teachers. So I have this STEAM teacher who we coach up. If we coach up how this is supposed to look, and then we have some co-teaching, then teachers can see what that looks like when you're actually allowing children, like you have the frameworks, you have the guardrails up on the bowling alley. The guardrails are up, you're in the right direction, but they have the flexibility to go any direction they want to, which I know folds into UDL and those types of things into that. But now when they had to be able to be creative and they have an input into how they get to demonstrate their own learning, they're way more involved. But that's something that not all teachers are comfortable with. And so it takes a lot of support and guardrails that you got to put on to allow them to feel comfortable in this, let them see what it looks like, and let them see the learning and engagement that the kids have when they're doing this. And they'll get addicted to that look on the kids' faces and the loud noises in the classroom and the engagement they have all along the way. And so that's where we want to get them all there. But we're slowly getting there. We're going to be there.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And we've been talking so much about the child, like kind of, it's so great for the child and all of that. But, it's also really great for the teacher, but it's hard work. It's not just like letting the kids, do whatever they want. It takes a lot of, still kind of planning and having to prepare for the unexpected, like the quote Jennifer made. So, I think it's hard work, but I think it's so important. And so I hope many, especially administrators on the call are really thinking about this and how they can implement it in their programs. Joy or Julie, do you want to add on to this question?
I feel like, Doug, that intentionality word is so keen, and in being intentional in allowing the children to lead what's happening means that you're listening, and then you're doing some research, and then you're also providing, so that if the idea goes away, it goes away. But if it continues, then you're also educating yourself along the way to how can I facilitate it so that learning goals are being met at the exact same time the child is driving what is being learned or how they're learning it. The intentionality is like key.
I think also too, from all the teachers that I've worked with, the one question that constantly comes up when we're working at the teacher level in terms of here activities and things that you can do, how do you connect really hands-on active learning experiences that will get at everything from foundational skills to, high comprehension and conceptual skills. I love to base it in the interactive read aloud. But the question that always comes up is, does my principal know? Does my principal know? And I think it's so important that we have so many administrators on this call, because a lot of times the people who even want to maybe, toe dip into this feel like they can't, feel like it's wrong, even though we have all this evidence from lots of different, aspects of, from, like I said, the science field to the educational field. So having our administrators say, you know what, maybe we don't know exactly how to do this, but let's do it together, and let's see if we can lean into this. And it doesn't mean that all of a sudden you just throw out your curriculum and you have to go from 0 to 60, right? And say, okay, now we're going to follow the child's lead. I mean, it's really not realistic, right? So how do you do those steps to say, you know what, we're going to add more playful pieces. We're going to look at that worksheet and say, you know what, let's take that into a really active kind of using objects and using, different kinds of manipulatives instead of a grid on a sheet. Do it open-ended kind of as opposed to a closed-ended worksheet. So I think that would be my biggest advice to administrators, is to show your vulnerability and say, let's try this out, and what steps can we take together?
Yeah. Everyone be Craig.
That's right.
Sure. Mud pies in the kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think too that, it, for a lot of us, and even for me at the beginning, you're very, very hesitant because it is a big change, right? And we all have our district mandated curriculum that we need to do and everything. And your first thought is, how are we going to do this and still be able to maintain what we need to do? And I think just letting go and saying, you know what, let's try it. Let's see where this leads us. It might not work. I have to say that I doubt that you're going to come to that conclusion, because from where we were to where we are now, and just the joy that happens and the organized chaos that goes on and the learning that's happening continuously throughout the school day is amazing. And it's just, every time I was the kind of administrator, when I used to walk into the TK class, I'd start sweating, my palms would sweat because they're little kids. And now I want to go in there every day and play. So I think just kind of, just baby steps, right? I think that's the best way to, you're not going to be able just to go from 0 to 100, but just trying things and getting that one teacher on board, I think, is also an important aspect of this, because like I said previously, once you get that one teacher, they talk, other people say, hey, look at this, this is working. And then allowing, like I said, other teachers to go see this in action. I think that's been one of the critical things for me, is having other teachers come in and see it and saying, wow, I want to try this. I'm gonna be able to relinquish my power in a way, right? And be able to at least try this. So
Yeah. Awesome.
Really quickly, just that play continuum is extraordinarily important because it reminds us that the wild free choice play all of the time isn't really what we're intending to say here, that there is a continuum, and for us to kind of keep a look on that and be sure that we're doing the middle of the road, not the complete teaching and not the complete freedom and chaos.
That's
Again,
awesome. Yeah, thank you, Joy. I think that's a perfect closing statement for our panelist discussion. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to provide your insight and share with all of us the wonderful work you're doing in your districts and programs. And so I'm going to hand it back over to Sarah Neville Morgan to close us out. Sarah?
Thanks so much, Lily. I hope everyone enjoyed that as much as I did. So thank you all for joining us this Friday. For some of you, it's late afternoon. For others across the country, it's actually early evening. So discussing the importance of topic of playful learning across the P3 continuum. You heard from everyone here that we just need to try it. We need to really make sure we're addressing the continuum and being mindful and intentional as we dive into it, and understanding the science of learning and development as a critical piece around joyful learning. So thank you to Jennifer and our panelists. All of you brought such expertise and passion to the topic. Some of you now have a new title as you leave us, Team Guy. And thank you to my CDE team. Special thanks to Lily for doing the moderating, to Valentina for opening, and to Shanna and Beth, who created this series as a labor of love and a reflection of our values at CDE around the importance of playful and joyful learning. Your time and dedication, all of you, early educators, faculty, coaches, parents, your time and dedication does not go unnoticed. Your attendance in this webinar shows your growth mindset and your dedication to the young children of California and the importance of supporting them to learn through play. We're confident that after you leave this evening, you will continue your journey with playful learning in your programs to continue children's opportunities to learn in their natural environment. A joyful, engaging, meaningful, and most importantly, playful learning environment. We want to leave you tonight with a quote from Vince Goen. Children have a full-time occupation. It's called play. Let them be occupied by it from their early years to their twilight years. And I have to slip in one from Fred Rogers because I always love going back to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning. But for children, play is serious learning. Play is really the work of childhood. So have a good evening, everyone, and thank you all for joining us.